Well, hey, friends, welcome to the Everyday Mulemanship Podcast. I'm Ty Evans. Thanks for choosing this show to listen to today. I appreciate you guys. Hope you're enjoying these wonderful guests I've had on recently, and we got another great one today. Um, Today's guest is actually an old pal of mine. Um, I've known him, a long time. Uh, his name's Bryan Hooley, and he's from here in Utah. Like me, he's a ranch horse versatility trainer. He trains cutting horses and reining horses. And this guy has some serious horsemanship talent. And I'm excited to talk about this stuff with him today. I know a lot of my listeners don't necessarily show, and this isn't going to be a podcast about showing necessarily because it's mostly the horsemanship that I want to dive into and also introduce you to Bryan. Just a great guy, wonderful man, and I'm glad to call him friend. So we'll get to that. Got to thank our sponsors, Roman Home Tents. Man, if you're looking for a good tent, if you like to pack and hunt and fish and get outside like me, you got to go with a Roman Home. I especially like the Drifter. Check them out, romanhome.com. Also, if you're looking for a good custom built saddle, Colt Saddlery, he will take care of you. Great man, great product, good gear. Be sure to check them out. And we got Boyd Ranch Mule Days coming up. I can't wait. It's just a couple weeks away now. Looking forward to it. It's going to be amazing. So hope you guys can join us out there. And if you can't come this year, come next year. It's going to be good. So big thanks to all of our sponsors. We also got Western Mule Magazine that has stood by us for years, as well as Mules and More Magazine. These people have taken great care of us. Diamond W Enterprises. If you're looking for a good jack to cover your mare this spring, be sure to look up Diamond W. Find them on Facebook. They're right here in Utah as well. So, with that, my friends, let's get to my interview with Mr. Bryan Hooley. All right, pal. We're going. Thanks for doing this.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ty.
Oh, yeah, you're right about the technology and making a living in this industry now. you know, gr
Uh,
growing up, whenever I thought about, okay, yeah, I want to train horses and mules for a living. That's what I want to do. I had no clue how much time I'd spend at a computer or on a phone. I had no idea.
well, and man, I gotta tell you, like, I'm terrible at it. If you look at my social media, um, I'm terrible at it. Luckily, my wife, has now decided she is gonna take over my social media and start helping me with that because I want to be a horse trainer. I
Mhm.
want to pull into the barn and go to riding horses. And every time I think I've got a great idea to, oh, I'm going to shoot this video this week or I'm going to do X, Y, or Z, uh, man, I just pull in, I go to riding horses, I help customers, and pretty soon I'm through all my horses. It's 6 o'clock at night, and I never did an ounce of that. And so, luckily, she's kind of taken that over, and she's gonna start helping me with the social media aspect.
That's smart. That's what Sky does. Sky does all of the social media. The only social media that I do, if you follow my Instagram, that's me. That's it.
Uh
And you can tell the difference when I
huh.
post versus Sky post because I'm like, I'll post a picture and say best day ever. That's
Uh
it.
huh. Yep.
Sky's posts are all like all smiley faces and exclamation mark,
Yep.
all the correct stuff. I don't know, whatever, but yeah, you can definitely tell. The time to make that post, usually it's something spelled wrong.
Yep. Yep. 100% me. And I'm terrible. Like I got the Peebo to follow me around like riding and stuff like that. And man, I don't want to just lope circles around the dang thing. Like I want to do rundowns or work cattle or something like that. Well, that dang thing's in the way if I'm doing something like that. Um, and so then I saw one of them drones, following me around. It looked really cool. Well, good Lord, they know what they want for those things. And I'm not smart enough to fly it and ride a horse at the same time. So that project was out. And so, 3/4 of the stuff I do, I just take a picture from sitting on top of whatever horse that I'm. Well, people are going to get bored seeing my horse's mane after, 15
Mhm.
posts or whatever. So, yeah, God bless her. She decided to take that on and run with that. So I'm pretty excited about that part of it. And you and Sky do it so well.
Well, like I said, Sky does it so well. I'm just like
Well,
you.
between the two of you, like you guys do really well at it, and you hit the nail on the head. Like when I got into this, man, I didn't think I was going to be dealing with people and the electronic part of our job. I just wanted to ride nice horses and make nice horses, and then
Hmm.
it all turned into this.
Yeah, growing up thinking, yeah, I'm just gonna ride all day,
Hmm.
and man, now I'm like,
Hmm.
okay, man, I need a few hours to go ride. Like, just let me go ride for a few hours. Come on, man.
Yeah, yeah,
You
and
know?
especially I watch your stuff and with doing the clinics and stuff like that. Man,
Mhm.
those take a lot of time and a lot of effort to get through those, and you don't have a lot of time for anything else when you're doing them.
Yeah, yeah, it's fun. I wanted to figure out how to make a living riding my own. So
Hmm.
I did that, but what I realized is, well, actually, I don't get to ride my own. I get to sit on my own for for
Hmm.
three
And
three
coach
hours.
from up there.
Yeah.
Yep.
So basically, I just got to pick my chair.
Hmm. Yeah. Yep. 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 Half the time, when I was doing a few clinics and stuff like that, and we got a lot of requests to start that project back up. But when I was doing my own, man, if it was very far away, I'd kind of weigh the factor. Was it worth me taking a truck and trailer, or was it worth me just jumping in a little economy car and cruising down there and stuff like that? So half the time I ended up not even getting to pick my chair. I was sitting on somebody else's horse, and
Mhm.
I didn't like how it stood still, or I didn't like how it did this or that. And so I ended up training on their horse the
Mhm.
whole time I was there. So it's kind
Yeah.
of funny the weird positions we seem to get ourselves into with this.
Yeah. These days this podcast is one of my favorite things. I love talking to people. And you've been on my list, Brian, for about 2 years now. And I just keep going. I got a huge list of people I want to,
That's
interview.
awesome.
I just keep clicking them off, clicking them off, clicking them off. Finally got down to you. And so appreciate you coming on to do this. You
Well,
probably
Ty,
never,
I'm grateful, honestly, to
yeah.
even make the list. I'm extremely grateful.
Yeah, the podcast is called Everyday Mulemanship, but it's not just mule stuff. And that's why, I wanted to have you on because it's not what I've learned is mulemanship or horsemanship. It's really lifemanship. It's not just the equine. It's everything we do. And you're pretty good about how do you say it? I guess practicing what you preach. I've known you a long time. You're just such a cool guy, and you live the stuff that you do on your horses, and so that's why I wanted to have you on. And a lot of my listeners won't know you, so do you mind just taking a second, and just kind of introducing yourself and talking about your program? We met a long time ago when I moved out there to Eagle Mountain, and Cedar Valley for when Sky and I first got married, moved out there. That's how I met you. But anyways, give these listeners a little rundown of what you got going, Brian.
Oh shoot, I came from a pretty diverse background. My mom trained Arabian show horses for a living, with specializing in the Western pleasure world. And my dad ran chariot teams, and so I kind of grew up with two polar opposite sides of the equine world. My mom could make one set up and lope down the rail beautifully, and that was back in the era where Arabians went forward. When they said put them at a hand gallop, by golly, they meant you better be hand galloping that bugger around the arena, and they were cruising at a pretty good pace. So I grew up in kind of that old school Western pleasure, on Arabs, which you and I have talked about multiple times, how similar they seem to be training method wise to the mules.
Oh
They
yeah.
really want to know the reason why they're doing a job. And then I came, with my dad driving teams. And my dad was truly an artist about teaching one to drive, not just hooking them side by side and hoping that you didn't die going down the track. Um, and Dad always said if there was a wreck, he could steer around it. And we dang sure did steer around quite a few wrecks over that long career of running buggy horses. And I mean, man, I've got pictures of me 9 years old holding two big fire breathing dragons and stuff with the driving lines, and Dad's doing whatever Dad needs to be doing. And I'm driving these suckers headed for the starting gate because Dad had taken so long to to teach him horses how to truly drive. Um, and so I kind of came up through that world, and then um, got interested in the steer wrestling and spent my entire high school career and I don't know 6 7 years in the PRCA steer wrestling and doing some cowboy work while I was steer wrestling and stuff. And I'd lost my good steer wrestling horse, and I come back home and was kind of just gonna ride colts, and stuff like that. And I had a gentleman take a gamble on me and say, "Hey, I got this horse who's not the best, but I'd like you to put him on cows and see if he's any good." And that was kind of the birth of my, show horse and career. And I look back, and we were sitting here one evening with my folks, and um, I think it was my mom said something, and my aunt said, "Well, he's been saying since he was 8 years old that he was going to be a horse trainer." And so looking back, my aunt was dang sure right. I'd said my whole life I was going to be a horse trainer. It just took me a little different path to get around to it and stuff. And I've always just really loved any equine sport done well. Doesn't matter whether it's rodeo, the world that you and I kind of came from. There's nothing prettier than a big old saddle bronc horse with her head cranked down between her legs, bucking across pen,
Mhm.
um, to a dressage horse, to the ring cow horses and versatility horses like we do now. I just anything equine, man. I love it done well, and so that's just kind of how I came around to this stage that I'm at now.
Yeah. Well, it's quite the journey from from everything from chariot racing, which is
Oh
that's
man.
that's wild. You talk about your dad doing it well, but there's a lot of people that don't do it well.
Oh man. The
There's a lot of people like,
stories
wow, somebody's gonna die, and some people do
the
die.
the the stories that I have, yeah, I mean, I was unfortunate enough to be um at the World Cutter Racing Finals when a buggy snapped and ended
Mm,
up catapulting the driver out and launching that driver literally over an entire stall barn off the side of the racetrack. And that driver passed away. I've seen my dad had a friend that he was running a team for, and he decided he wanted to drive that team. And we were at Heber. I don't know if you remember, Heber used to have a racetrack, and the rodeo arena sat in the middle of it.
yep.
That's where we ran when I was a kid. That was our club. And he was going to drive his team that year, and Dad says, "All right, well, you can drive." And so they take him in the gate. My dad says, "Do you want me to ride out with you the first time?" He's, "Oh no, I got it, I got it." They pulled the pin on. He stepped out the back of the chariot and let that team of horses run down the racetrack without a driver.
Jeez, it's wild. Man,
Yeah, and so yeah, when you say wrecks and not done well, I think
yeah,
I've seen my limit of what I wanted, what I
yeah,
didn't want to see not done well.
yeah. No kidding, no kidding. Well, what you're doing now, man, you dang sure do it well. And
Thank you.
the ranch horse versatility, that's pretty cool stuff. I like watching when you do post every 5 months. I'm glad your wife's taking over.
Yeah.
But when I do get to see some of your stuff, it sure looks awesome, and there's a lot that goes into that. So tell our listeners what ranch horse versatility kind of consists of.
Okay, so the versatility horse consists of usually, and you'll find a little variance depending on your local area, because it is somewhat customizable what classes you offer. So you can kind of customize to your areas, but generally what you will find is a cutting class, rather than a big draped rein and a 3 cow class like you would think of, um, the regular cutting horse. It's usually a 2 cow class, and you put a little hand in there and help stop your horse or something like that. They're not penalizing you for that, right? Because it's a true all around horse. A little more like the cow horse, the national reigning cow horses are. And then you'll have generally a rein class with the cow work portion. So for the beginner amateurs, it's a boxing only. For us open riders, it's boxing, drive them down the fence, 1 turn each way, and then we actually pull a rope down and rope them and stop them rather than circling them like the cow horse. And then so you've got those 2 classes kind of combined into one. The ranch riding, which is going to be a class of a lot of change of gaits. So walk, trot, lope, extended lope. You are going to have some obstacles like ground pole, a side pass, something like that in that pattern. And it's all going to be a pattern. And then the ranch trail, which is going to be almost all obstacles and a few different rate changes between your different gates of your animal. But it's going to be a lot of opening a gate, closing a gate, dragging a log, over bridges, turning in boxes, backing through L's, all that kind of stuff. It's going to encompass all of that. And so you have somewhere that a beginner can come and compete, and they have plenty of classes that they may fit into. They may be coming from a working cattle background. And so they'll fit in right there really, really good to kind of start and get their feet wet. You have a lot of people who are very timid of working cattle that they can get started in, the ranch ride or the ranch trail and do some obstacles. And that's kind of how that seems to go.
Yeah, that sounds good. That sounds like a lot of fun, actually. A lot of
It's
cool
a
stuff.
lot of fun, and we try and keep it. Sorry, I don't know what's going on with my phone.
All
We
right.
try and keep it um, like on a local level, very beginner friendly.
Mhm.
And it is an all breed association. And so if you and the kids wanted to show up with mules and stuff like that, we hope that our judges are trained well enough that it doesn't matter what breed you're riding, they see the value in that animal for what it is.
Mhm. Yeah, that's cool. Do you ever get any meals yet?
I have not. You haven't showed up. So no, on a local level we haven't. Now there is a club over in California that I've gone over and showed at a little bit, and they have mule specific classes. But that's been the only one that I have been a part of. Now I did have a big half draft mare that I showed for a solid year, and she was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Like she loved the obstacle courses. She thought that was the best thing since sliced bread, and I think I won more money on that mare that year than probably anything else in my string. Because she was a lot of fun, and she handled like a little quarter horse,
Yeah.
and but no, we've dang sure some half drafts. They seem to be a hot item right now.
Yeah, they're
Um,
pretty popular in Utah
oh
right now. There's, I mean,
man,
well, kind of everywhere. The half drafts are kind of like yeah, the thing. People are loving those.
they're kind of turned into a overgrown designer horse lately.
Just
But yeah,
when
we've had some of those.
when people, I mean, when that kind of came on the scene, you know me, saddle bronc riding background. Like, okay, guys, what do you think every single bucking horse is? It's a half draft. It's a half draft horse. What are you doing? So I'm thinking, they're making these. I'm like, you know what you're making, right? Like, look at Calgary
Yeah.
Stampede. Like, come on. You know?
I see. I'm like you, Ty. I look at them big buggers, and I've rode quite a few of them. I've had quite a few in my program
Yeah.
and stuff like that. Most people just bring them to me to see how well I can get them to handle. They're not really looking to compete, but I've got a few ranches that I ride some horses for, and they just want to see how well I can get them to compete. And so, um, I always tell people I don't love them because they never seem to soften up like a quarter horse will, But this particular mare, she was a lot of fun. She'd get soft and she'd get feely in the rib cage, and she was kind of a freak of nature. From what I understand, she actually came from some breeder down there, kind of by where you live.
Hmm. Right on.
Yeah, and she was a really neat horse. She was started as a mounted shooter.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, that's popular too. That mounted shooting down there to, Mount Pleasant. You've shown down here. I mean, they do a mounted shooting there every week, and
Yeah.
that's pretty popular. And yeah, there's a few guys that show up with those big old half drafts and run around with those long manes. It's kind of cool looking. They look cool.
Yeah,
They look
they
cool.
do. They do. And I mean, I guess if you got drag bulls to the pen,
Oh
they're
yeah,
they're
yeah,
they're good for
yeah.
that and stuff. And yeah, I the mounted shooter that's in my program, it's actually her sister that has the big half draft.
Right
And
on.
then she's a part of the one that's in my program, she's a part of um every mounted shooting organization there is, and very successful at what she does.
Yeah. Well, they're getting popular, and yeah, they're on them ranches. Some guys like them. I don't know how well they trot out and cover country, for a day, but you're right. When you got to rope something and something big too, get something done. They fit the bill. So
Yeah, I think I'm assuming like everything, they kind of
Mhm.
have their place where guys like them and stuff like that. I just, for what we do, they're not going to
Yeah.
run a cow down the fence and turn them and stuff like that. But yeah, they they seem to be popular. So
Or if you do got to
sometimes you
run
got to
one down,
ride what pays the bill.
yeah, I guess if you do have to run one down the fence, you just better go really wide, so
Yeah,
you
yeah,
can make a slower turn.
and pack a long rope.
Yeah, yeah, grab your 60 footer, right?
Yep, yep, for sure, for
Yeah,
sure.
right on. So, speaking of cows, man, I want to talk about some of your cow work because I have a lot of students. We do some beginning cow work class. We call it Intro to Cow Work, and basically it's you and I both grown up out here in the Great Basin country. I'm kind of teaching that kind of stockmanship. All right, we work slow, kind of the no dust club, you know what I mean?
Yep,
And that fits a lot of the mules pretty good too, because there's
sure.
some of the mules, they're just some can be really snappy, like a good quarter horse can, but for the most of them, there's a little bit of delay, and we could go down that rabbit hole too, where we could talk about the training aspect of it too, because that makes a huge difference. And I want to hear
Absolutely.
some of that. But it's really fun to get these people out there working cows. I think working cows is one of the best things you can do for your horses and mules. I mean, it gets them thinking, and
Hmm.
when they realize they can influence a cow's movement, it's like you gave them a shot of confidence. It totally changes.
Purpose.
Yeah.
Yep.
So let's talk about that a little bit, Brian. So like when you get one of these horses in and you're gonna start working some cows and introducing them to cattle, like what's your process of going through that?
Oh, man, I
So
spend
let's say they've never worked cows at all. Okay, so let's take
yep.
that horse. They never seen one.
So I like to take a little bit of time, like you said, kind of that no dust club. I'm a huge proponent of, can I teach that horse or mule, whatever it is I need to put on a cow that day? Can I teach him to place his feet right in order to get the job done. And what I mean by that is in a straight line, you've been a part of this. In a straight line, cattle can about run pound for pound with your horse. Like you might get them gathered up somewhere down the road, but they can run a straight line pretty quickly. But usually where I can get them beat is I can get them beat in the turn. And that's kind of the cutter's mentality, right? Is it's all about that turn. You can teach a horse to turn faster than a cow is. Cow's got to swing his head around, kind of get his body shaped up to get around there. Horse can get down on his hindquarters and get stepped through. So I'll spend a little bit of time early on working them on my flag and working slow and just teach them to get back on their haunches, place their front feet and stuff like that. I won't necessarily spend months and months and months doing it because I think you can take the cow out of one by doing that, and make them too robotic. But I'll just kind of see if I can start to teach them where to place their feet. Once I have that, then I like to go to live cattle. I try and pick slow cattle, and I'll warm them horses up out around them cattle, um, and kind of give them a purpose, a reason to look in there and see what that cow's about. And then as I've got that horse kind of worked down, thinking about being a little slower, thinking about being a little quieter, I'll just kind of sneak into that old quiet cow that, probably not going to go very far, and see, just kind of let that cow take me somewhere. Once that cow takes me somewhere and that horse wants to go with it, and I can sneak out there and stop that cow and let that horse use that maneuver that I taught him to go stop it again, man, that might be all I get done for the day. I might step off and pet that bugger, teach that horse that control and that move with that cow was exactly what I wanted. And I just slowly try and build that confidence a little bit each day when I'm working cattle, that step out there and that control of that cow, like you said, a perfect example, influencing that cow was exactly what I wanted that horse to do. And then I'll, you know, slowly increase length of time, better cattle, all that kind of stuff. As my horse shows, he can do that.
Well, I think building those tools before you get out there and go to battle. I think a lot of people make that they do the opposite of that. They're like, all right, well, let's pull the cow out and they don't
Yeah.
got any tools. So what I hear a lot and what I run into, so somebody will come to one of my intro to cow classes and maybe they've had a bad experience working cows before because of that, the very thing. They said, well, I went out there to move cows and my mule got scared and they ran off with me, whatever. And so in the beginning of our little class, we'll start going through tools. Okay, let's see how well you back up. Okay, let's see you back up and turn. Let's see you just turn on the haunches. Okay, let's see you just stop. Let's see you trot to stop. Let's see you, lope down the pen a little bit and stop. Let's see let's see what your tools are, and we try to match them up with basically a job that they can do. Because I like
Hmm.
them. I like my students and my mules and my horses to be successful. I don't want to see them fail, and get in trouble, because it seems like once they get a little bit bothered by them cows, it's like it's like 10 times harder to get anything done. So build the tool before you use the tool. That's a good.
100%.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, you hit the nail on the head saying, that's really the principle I try and come from is that success. I want to see that horse be successful. I want to see that customer be successful. And let's face it, like it or not, our living's tied directly to that.
Yeah.
If we can't help people be successful, you and I aren't going to be in business much longer.
Yeah.
And so I really try and teach from that principle of just building that. You said a mule getting scared and running off. I'm sure you've probably seen more than a handful of them do that. What once you have that principle of okay, they can guide them and handle them, where do you go from there?
So after we got some tools going, and that's the first thing. I mean, like if we don't have the tools, I tell them like, I know you signed up for a cow class here. but we don't have the tools. Like this is not going to be great for you. Usually they'll end up, I'll say, okay, we'll get some cows just kind of moving around the arena. Like I'll pull out two or three and we'll just get the rest of the group and they move the cows ahead of them. And then those people just follow them. And that's,
Hmm.
and we keep doing that until those animals at least get familiar. Cause I'm like, well, we only got 3 days here. We don't got enough time to really get a great handle on them. It's not like we're going to make a huge change in their, you know, their stop and their turnaround in 3 days. I can help them get some ingredients, but it's just not enough time for them to, bake the cookies. You know what I mean? So,
Hmm.
so I'll just work on some confidence and some exposure. However, the people that do have some tools, then I will let them pull out one at a time. And my favorite thing to get my mules doing is to get the mule hooked onto the cow. So I do this one or two ways. If we're here at my place, I have those rope and dummies, those what are they called? Oh shoot.
Like the Smarties.
Yeah. Okay. It's on
Hmm.
tracks. So I got one of those. And I love that for getting a mule that's never worked cows, but it has some tools to get hooked onto something. So I'll just take off basically at a walking speed for the mule, and I'll tell the person, I say, okay, so here's your box. This is your target zone. Okay, I don't want you any further back than like 10 foot. Okay,
Hmm.
I don't want you off to the side much more than a couple feet off center, a couple feet off center here. So basically, you give them this little rectangle to ride in. And I say, okay, as long as the animal's in there, you don't touch them. You put your reins
Hmm.
down, you leave them alone, you just let them be there. Make it easy, right? If they
Yep.
go over here, it's a quick correction. So if they go off to the right, quick correction, rein, seat, leg, rein, bam, put them back in the rectangle, leave them alone. They go off to the left,
Hmm.
seat, leg, rein. If they get too far back, get them up there. If they're going past, get them back. It's just stay in that
Hmm.
rectangle. But as long as they're in that spot, I leave them alone. And what I want to see is for that mule to stay in that rectangle for, let's just call it like 30 seconds. So they kind of get
Okay.
they kind of get in there, and I'll hit a stop on. I'm usually driving my side by side or my four wheeler. I'll hit the stop and let that mule get right up on that cow's butt, and then just let him soak. I tell people like,
Hmm.
okay, don't fidget, just be invisible. Just,
Hmm.
Martin Black is one of my mentors, and that's what he taught me is, okay, you get them hooked on, now be invisible. Just let them soak, leave them
Hmm.
alone. Don't interrupt, because a lot of people want to go to smack them on the neck, like, don't touch them.
Yep.
Don't touch them. Like, just keep your
Yep.
hands to yourself, because
Yep.
I want them to realize they caught that cow. So
Hmm.
that's the first thing I want them to learn is you can catch the cow, and that cow will stop when you catch it. And mules, they don't want to run around in there any longer than they have to. So I'll
Absolutely.
teach them, hey, you get up there, the sooner you catch them, the sooner you get a break, buddy.
Hmm.
And then that kind of seems to influence the stops and everything else. And then like with live cattle, I'll have them take one or two, whatever. One is best. I like one, just a
Hmm.
slow lead steer, and
Hmm.
they'll I'll have them drive it like up a fence, and then I want them to go wide around it, go to the inside of the arena, get wide around it, and just stop the cow. Now this is a slow, dull cow, so it's not like
Yep.
it's gonna
That's we use the same thing.
it's not going to freaking turn and run off. It's just going to go,
Yep.
oh, it just stops. And then I say, okay, you stopped it. Now I want you to just leave your mule alone. So I want them to know they just stopped that steer.
Hmm.
Just leave them be. As soon as the steer, usually the steer will maybe sit there for a minute, chew its cud for a second, but maybe it goes off again. I say, okay, now get around it and stop it again. No, just go around it. So all they're doing, they're not really having to execute a hard maneuver. They're just using stockmanship. Okay, go wide, cut it off. Go wide,
Hmm.
cut it off. And pretty soon that mule or that horse, they're like, okay, all right. So, then you get something the next level up, and then as soon as you get some solid maneuvers in there, then we can really have some fun, and it's kind of fun to work one that's kind of slow and pokey. Go out there and make a figure eight on it. I'll set up barrels for my students
Hmm.
and have them just move them around the barrels,
Okay.
and that's really fun. We'll do the barrel pattern. So in the cow class, well, all right, we're gonna. Anybody has anybody ever done cow barrel racing? And people are like, "What are you talking about?" I'm like, "Well, you're gonna run barrels today on a cow." So
I love it.
and just it's just fun because
Yeah.
it teaches the student, because a lot of these students, they don't necessarily come from backgrounds like you and I, where we're around cattle, and you just kind of know where to be and when to be there. All these
Hmm.
students have never done that, so doing something like that teaches them the stockmanship, and that's kind of what the class is focused on anyways, is
Hmm.
stockmanship. So they'll get around there and they'll learn positioning, and it's pretty obvious when they're in a poor position because things don't work out. So
Yep.
they they get in a good position and it works out pretty good. And anyways, that's the kind of stuff we do, and we just keep building from there. And sometimes, I don't get to like self pick the cattle myself. So we kind of
Yeah.
just leave it up to the clinic host, and they line up the cattle, and there's all different kinds of cattle. My least favorite are the used up team roping steers. All they want to do is run down the pen. And then they
Uh-huh.
get down there and they want to run back. So usually I tell people, like, okay, now, sorry guys, but we're gonna have to take the first day just to train these cattle.
Yep.
And we're about to ruin some team roping cattle, you guys, because they're trained to run straight down the pen now, and I don't want them to do that. And so we'll ruin team roping steers.
The same thing, you know how it is. You're here in Utah with us and stuff. And sometimes that's all you can get your hands on
Mm.
here, especially, what winter months, sometimes that's all you can get your hands on is some roping cattle. Same thing with the middle of summer when guys are turned out on the mountain and stuff. Sometimes that's all we get. But that's where the stockmanship really comes into play. Is I might roll into a horse show. This is no kidding, Ty. I pulled into a derby one time. And it wasn't a big derby by any stretch. It wasn't the NRCHA derby, but it was a derby with some pretty good added money. We were running some fair money. And day before the horse show, the cow contract just called up and said, no go, we're not showing up.
Oh no.
And so this poor, group that is putting on this derby, you know, do we refund money? I've been in their situation. It's a terrible thing.
Mm.
I'm out there jogging my horse around, getting ready for the cutting, and it's probably 5:30 in the morning. We settle in the herd at 7:30 in the morning at those deals. And it's probably 5:30 in the morning, and I swing a leg over my horse and get in there, and I'm walking past the cow pens, and there was a lot of black and white in there. And I thought, well, I wonder they must be transporting milk cows around here. I'll be danged if that's what we didn't have to work. And
Yeah.
there was a lot of competitors that were mad. I didn't want to work milk cows, but I think the good horses still shined. I think the horse that won that particular derby, at least in the open class that I was watching, it should have won the derby no matter where we were at. And that horse read a cow well, worked a cow well. Yeah, the scores weren't there because there was no degree of difficulty or challenge or anything like that. But the value of that horse really still stood out and shined through because that trainer had put the time and effort into that horse and the horsemanship into that horse to get that horse to really truly read a cow no matter what pace it was going.
Yeah, I mean, cow's a cow.
Hmm.
It's stock. So figure out how to fit the stock. And a lot of my listeners right now, they're probably thinking, "Hey, you know what? That a milk cow sounds pretty good to work." Because
Hey, I'll tell you what, like I've gone and bought a pen of Jersey cows to work my 2 and 3 year olds on.
yeah, they're great. They're mellow. And as far as handling too, that's what I tell them, a lot of my students, because they say, "Hey, I want to get some cows just to play with," and I say, "Hey, seriously, Holsteins, Jerseys, because they're
Yeah,
not going to kill you. They're not going to run you through the fence. If
they kind of want to be your friend.
Yeah, like you can go pet them, and
Yep.
you know, and they're just fine. They're not going to scare your mule or your horse. They're just
Yeah.
there. They're not going to snort at you or anything, and And anyway, so yeah, cow's a cow. Stockmanship is stockmanship wherever you're at. It's the same thing with horsemanship.
It
You
is.
know that because all these we could talk about all the different types of horses. You mentioned like Arabians growing up with your mother, and your mother's a sweetheart. I love your mom. She's so wonderful. Um, and growing up with Arabians, and it's interesting depending on where you're at in the country. Arabians could be like, oh yeah, or oh no. It just
Yeah. Huh?
depends on what you're doing, where you're at. But to me, it's just, hey, there's, horse is a horse. It's a mule. It's a horse. It's a donkey. Whatever. It's just equine.
Mhm.
Principles never change. The principles don't change. And so, what I think is interesting, particularly in the show world, and this is the contradictory part where, like somebody like you got to be able to flip your switches because in the show pen, you want your action. Like you want to get some
Mhm.
turns and you hope that cow's a little spicy and you get some real playtime. But then you go work for your neighbor over there and you're like, please don't run off. You know? Please don't turn back on me like that. Just go.
It's been kind of interesting, Ty. I like I say, I when I was rodeoing, I worked for a pretty good sized ranch up there in Woodruff, Utah. We ran, shoot, man, 1,800 head of mothers and fill in the blank with how many bulls and yearlings and all that kind of stuff. Um, and while my horses now mimic what we did on the ranch, um, I could not have a horse on the ranch uh, turn as hard, be as aggressive, and stuff like that. Um, Sheerly out of the fact of I might be working in the grass pasture. Well, if my horse drops the anchor and swallows himself and turns back the other way, we're probably gonna fall down in the grass.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it, so sheerly out of that aspect, you have to learn to work cattle for what your environment is, and I think that really actually helped me a lot. Um, Working cattle in so many different scenarios, whether it was out on the mountain, in feed yards, or in the show pen, is learning what my environment was and what I could get out of that horse. The other thing I play into a big factor too is, while I may take one of my show horses and go brand or something like that, the horse that I get on to go ride out and cover a lot of country and move cattle that way is very different from the horse that I'm looking for to go into the show pen and be successful.
Yeah.
They're night and day. They're different animals. And so I tell my customers a lot, let's buy a horse that fits what you want, no different than you would go buy a car to fit your needs. If you tell me you're looking for an open horse for me to go show, he's going to be a completely different animal than the horse that I'm going to go buy for that owner to be able to go show.
Mm. Yeah.
They're going to be completely different than the horse that I go look for to go for a ride with you up the mountain. You know, uh, they're going to be very different horses. And yet, at the same time, I say that, but yet at the same time, I always try and coach my customers into getting the horse that is going to fit them. If my customer wants a true versatility horse, I'm going to go look for something that is going to fit. He's going to be able to go with Ty and go for a trail ride. He's going to be able to walk in the show pen and do all the different classes that we offer in the versatility. Um, so trying to find that match is the real struggle, that I run into in my business.
Yeah, that's tough. That's tough wherever you're at, But I like what you guys do with your versatility because these days there's so much specializing in everything. I mean,
Everything.
I do it. I specialize in mules. Yeah, yeah, I can. I got horses and I can ride horses but mules is what I'm known for. And But the versatility, that's super interesting to me. And like what I tell people with mules too, is like, bring back the all around mule, bring back the all around horse that you could go show and play with your friends this weekend at the show, but then also you get a call from your neighbor and you got to go help him gather some cows tomorrow. You can go do that too. And then, oh yeah, your daughter has a barrel race, on Monday. Okay, well, something that she can go run barrels on too. The hard part is the winning. you
Mhm.
know,
Well, and
when you're
I
competitive at high level, that's tougher. That's a tougher deal.
it is, but I think it comes back to learning our customers, no different than learning our horses or our mules.
Yeah.
Learning what their passion is and what their desire is, and then us as trainers, I think it just becomes our job to try and help those dreams come true.
Yeah.
Try and lead them in the best direction that we can lead them in order to help them have their level of success, no matter what it is, whether it's showing at a high level or, like you say, a true all arounder. To me, I think where I find so much passion in the cow horse and the versatility horse, and even more so in the versatility horse, is you hit the nail on the head. It's the true all around horse. Um, and those aren't easy to find and they're not easy to make.
No, they're tough to it's tough to train. But it's really cool what you do because you can go in there and you work those cows. And when you pull one out and you make that figure eight, or you go down that fence and you can go at that high level and that speed, but then you can come to your truck horse and be accurate and not
Hmm.
just blow all over the place. Because there's plenty of people that they could go turn and get after a cow out there and throw some dirt clods in the air, but then you go try to get them across a bridge, you know, and they're like, they're snorting.
Oh yeah.
They're
Oh
not
yeah.
crossing a bridge. We don't cross no
Yep.
stinking bridges.
Yep. Yep. And
So
I think that's where a lot of my passion for the sport is man, how do I get that blend? What
yeah.
is that blend? That blend's different for every horse, and even my open horses, this last year, I didn't show any open horses in the cow work. And I kind of got some friends in the business. They weren't saying this in a bad way. Um, but they were like, man, when's Hooley going to show up and show some cow horses down the fence? And and I told him, I said, just just be patient. I've got a pretty good string of young horses this year, but I'm not willing to blow them up. I want to make sure that they're right, and I want to make sure that they're ready and stuff like that. And they're not going to crack out till next year, but I promise when I crack them out, I'm I'm going to be confident that I have a spot where I can put them and go be successful and win. And so sometimes for me, it's not about, you know, having that horse in the show pen all the time. To me, it's can I get in that show pen and be competitive?
Yeah.
And if it takes me sitting out, one horse show or one season, I might do that just to make sure that I can be as successful as possible.
So what are you looking for in your horses to be ready to go at that level? How are you preparing them, and what are you trying to get out of them?
Man, for me, it's a lot of mental. You know, is that horse mentally mature enough to be able to take the high stress of the training and stuff like that? When I'm working on a maneuver, will he get snappy? Will he get soft? Will he think through what he's doing? But at the same time, can I take him from that high, +1 turnaround or run and stop, um, and set my bridle reins down and have that horse just stand there and take some air and relax and stuff like that. And then when I do ask him to move off, is he still snappy about it? Or does he get numb? If I let him stand around, does he get kind of numb and distracted and start looking over here at, the Tweety bird flying by? If that's what's happening, I need to work on, hey buddy, I'm on you, you know, stay focused right here. I think with the cow portion, that's a little bit different because that cow designates everything. They
Yeah.
designate the speed, they designate the intensity, all that kind of stuff. So that's a little bit different. But then when it comes to the dry work, whether it's the reining pattern or the ranch ride or the trail, um, that's all fixed object stuff. So that horse needs to be thinking about what I'm asking them to do. And so I'll spend as much time as I can. Man, I'll work on something. Let's say the turnaround, for example. I'll draw that horse up in the face, get him soft, get him stepping his front feet and turning. Man, that feels really good. Let him go. Okay, can I get him to turn that hard the very first revolution, right? Like most of the time we have 3.5 turns, but in order for an open rider to be in that plus category, and especially lean into that plus 1.5, they better be at top speed by half of a revolution. Can I put that kind of intensity into him and have him reach his peak in one turn? And as soon as I stop and drop the reins, he lowers his head and just kind of takes a breath and relaxes and chews. If I'm to that point and that horse is being consistent there, then okay, it's time to go see what we've got.
As you're saying this, I'm thinking about a principle that we teach. We call it the learn to learn.
Hmm.
The horse has to learn how to learn. And I explain this to my students. It's like, okay, say you just did a good maneuver, and you could just pull any maneuver out of your hat. I don't care if it's a side pass or a turnaround or anything, but just pull any maneuver out. And then when you quit, does your horse or your mule actually know how to quit and take that reward? It's like some of them
Hmm.
on the start, they can't relax. They don't know how. They just simply don't know how to quit and relax and take the reward, take the release. They just don't understand how. And we could go into all kinds of stuff on that. There's some people that stop at the wrong time. They quit before the animal should be quitting, whether it's
Yep.
too soon or too late or whatever. But yeah, they got to learn how to learn. As soon as they kind of get addicted to that reward, then they'll do anything for you. And then when you
Hmm.
when you do put those reins down like you're talking about and you leave them alone, they're like, oh yeah, okay. And they start licking and chewing and they feel good and they relax and life is good. And then the next thing, and this is kind of what you're talking about too, is all right, so once they do find that release, can they be relaxed and ready for the
Hmm.
next thing? Because a lot of them are like, ah, and then they go to sleep.
Hmm. Yes.
You're like, hey, 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 but the cow's gone. Dang, oh man, we lost that
Uh-huh.
one.
Uh-huh.
It's like, oh, that was felt so good to take a nap.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
So
And I'm sure you guys, I'm sure you guys see it. You know, breeding for my sport has been going on for, oh Lord, longer than you and I have been alive combined. Um, we they bred for a long time to try and get this much cow into these horses. Um, and so learning to try and take that natural intensity and teach them to do just exactly what you're talking about, and not just hunt that release and then disconnect, but hunt that release and stay with you and stay right there in that moment, ready to explode, but yet not explosive. That to me is, I have a lot of fun and frustration all at the same time, when I'm in the training pen working on that very thing. Like I say, the cow work maybe not so much because I teach from such a point of letting my cow designate where my horse is going and how fast they're getting there. But especially when it comes to the dry work, man, we're working rundowns today. Okay, I get my horse warmed up and I got him legged up and stuff, and I start cruising down through that pen, and man, that booger goes down through there and drags a big old set of 11s and stands up real solid and cute, and I'm like, man, that felt really good. And I'll sit there and sit there and sit there, and just about the time that horse starts to disconnect, I'll be like, dude, we got to turn right here. We got to spin, and you got to give me that same level of intensity. And for me, that seems to do a lot with those horses learning to stay connected throughout the ride. and I do a lot of things. I teach a lot from the time they're babies, from the time they're colts. Um, I have little things that I do that most people don't catch on to, but they're little things that I know that horse recognizes to let that horse know that they are completely done. But until they get those things, I need their focus. I'll step off, say I'm working rundowns. I'll warm them up, do all my things, and I might get off and put my skid boots on. Just because I got off doesn't mean you lose focus. Now, if I get off and I unwrap their legs and I undo, the number one thing I do is I undo my back cinch. Once I undo my back cinch, I might get back on them to walk them out. But once that back cinch is undone, that's their time to relax and stuff. And so I do a lot of things from the time they're babies all the way through my training program to always try and make sure that I'm giving them their best shot to know where I'm at and what I'm looking for out of them.
Yeah, and they can read those consistent signals. And I try to share that with my students all the time. Like, they pay attention to all these little things that you do. You don't know you're doing them. And we
Mm-hmm.
talk about being intentional all the time because, man, they can read. I tell people, hey, they've read your book that you didn't even know you've written.
Mm-hmm.
they know you. They know you, and these things make a difference. They really
Yeah,
do.
they make a huge difference. Yeah, I'm really hard on my. You can ask any of my non-pros that have been with me very long. Um, I'm really hard on them. In fact, one that I believe is a relation to you, Nicole. She's been with me for quite a while and had a lot of really good success. Her and her big van horse. And man, when she first started with me, well, why are you doing that? Well, I don't know. And I'm like, well, Van does. Don't do that again.
Yeah.
And she'd be like, well, I didn't know I was doing that. I'm like, no, I know you didn't, and that's why I'm
Mhm.
bringing it up. But Van knew you did that. Don't do that again, because you're telling Van something different than what your brain's thinking,
Oh yeah.
and stuff. And so spending a lot of time. It's one thing if I have to ride and show that horse, because the only person I have to worry about is me. I have to make
Mhm.
sure I'm on my game and I'm ready to go show. But teaching those customers more like, teaching your clinics and stuff like that. I need to spend a lot of time with those customers, you know, dialing down what they're doing to try and help their horse be successful. I
Yeah.
can keep their horse ahead of them. I can keep their horse out in front of them, knowledge wise and ability wise, until we max out that horse's ability. Teaching the people, uh, that's a whole different side of our occupation that I didn't know was
Mhm.
going to be such a thing.
Yeah. Yeah. See, luckily I like that part of it. I really enjoy it. But it's interesting the little things that come up that people just don't know. And even me, it reminds me one of my most embarrassing moments of my career, Brian. Okay. So I was doing a clinic in Tennessee and it started pouring rain. Okay. It was just pouring rain. This clinic was in conjunction with a mule cell, the Reese Brothers mule cell back there. And of course, the cell's inside. They got a cell ring inside, and it was available. The cell wasn't until the next day, so it's pouring. I say, "Hey, everybody, let's go inside, and I'll just do some demos for you. You guys can sit, and because it's just a little cell ring. You've seen cell rings. They're small,
Yep.
not a lot of room. So I'll just take a mule in there. I'll just demo, right? Just show some things, whatever. And I'm on the ground, and I'm talking to the audience there. And the mule I had at the time, he didn't want to hold still. Okay, he was just all over the
Hmm.
place, and we could make up all kinds of excuses like, oh well, he's distracted at the cell barn, whatever, whatever. We could talk about this, but this lady, she she raises her hand. I call on her. She said, Mr. Evans, I think that mule would stand still if you didn't talk with your hands so much. Because as I'm talking, I'm doing all this
Yeah.
crap with my hands. And I had my hand on the lead rope, right?
You
And
were
so I'm talking,
communicating to that horse
you
every
know,
time.
and so this lady speaks up and I, back then it was, young and extra dumb, even dumber than I am now. And, so you kind of get defensive, right? The
Oh yeah.
ego kicks in. and and I know ego is mule and horse enemy number one.
Oh yeah.
I'm like, well, no, 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 no. He's probably scared of the cell barn, blah, blah, blah. And she just sits down but that comment haunted me. So now I am like extra sensitive with my hands, man. I'm like, do
You
not,
bet.
do not move your hands. Do not move your hands. But that's actually, I don't know who it was, don't remember, I have no idea. But I remember that. And um since then I've been so subconscious about just the unintentional things. See, I wasn't thinking about it, but
Hmm.
that's the problem. I wasn't thinking about it.
Hmm.
And now I notice it with all, in any of our groundwork classes with my students when they're talking or whatever, and they're flipping their lead rope and whatever. And it's interesting the correlation, because they'll say, "Yeah, geez, my mule sure is dull. He sure doesn't move when I ask him to." I'm like, well, let me tell you a story about this time in Tennessee. You know, we can make them dull. We don't even know. We do things that we don't even realize. And so, I think if we really want to be aware of the horse and really be a good communicator, a good leader, whatever you want to call it, we got to be in control of ourselves. Like if I can't control my own body, how the heck am I going to control a 1,200 pounder? Like what am I going to do with that thing?
Yeah. You hit the nail on the head. Self-control in what we do. Um, I'm sure you get it. People come into your clinics. I've followed you quite a bit. I've got a mule. Well, I got an aunt that lives out in Reno, and she's got a good friend of hers that I've met quite a little bit, and um, she's a huge fan of yours. She takes a lot from, your clinics and your DVDs and stuff, and puts it to work on her mules and stuff. And I said to her one time, I think she might have been getting ready to go to one of your clinics, or maybe she was just talking about it. And she said something, and she says, "Man, I'm nervous." And I says, "Well, why are you nervous to go to a clinic? It's not like you're going to a horse show." This is what my brain's thinking, right? This is going to show
Yeah.
my ego no different than yours. Man, why you're going to a clinic to get help? It's not like
Yeah.
you're going to a horse show. I go to horse shows. I get nervous at horse shows. Well, I'm getting nervous at a horse show for the same reason that this gal is getting nervous coming to possibly one of your clinics, right?
Hmm.
She's going to have Ty Evans sitting there helping her with her mule, and in her mind, it's the judgment, right? Whether it's the judgment for you or from other people, it's judgment, right? And we all get that nerves and stuff. And I stepped away from the conversation, and I thought about that conversation over the years periodically. And I thought, man, isn't that so funny? Like, here I am thinking that, well, my job's harder because I'm getting judged by a judge. And
Yeah.
but really it's not. It's the same thing. We're getting nervous, and those nerves cause us to react different. And those nerves cause us to do things different, move tighter, think we're doing things that we're not, whatever. And we're not being the conscious level that we need to be, that we have been at home to be successful on that animal. And so, that's one thing I've really tried to take into my program for myself, as much as I try and teach my customers, is being very, very conscious about what we are doing and leaving those emotions. You can ask my customers who have been with me for a long time. I have a rule. You can be emotional all the way till you walk in those barn doors. Once you walk in the barn doors, if you can't check your emotions at the barn doors, come and pet your horse, brush your horse, whatever, but don't get on and try and make a ride, because we have to be able to, in my mind, we have to be able to take emotions out of it. We have to be able to be not numb, but uh, very casual, relaxed. I don't know what the right word is there, but we have to be, we can't be, our emotions can't come into play right there, because we're going to make mistakes that we don't even know that we're making. We're going to talk with our hands when we should just be sitting still.
Mhm. It makes a difference. I love to evaluate just like you. I mean, you're in this category. All the great horsemen that I know that I've been around, and that includes you. What are their traits? What makes them so good? What makes them so great? And that's one of them right there is controlling emotion. Um, and I tell people, like people say, well, fake it till you make it. Well, there's really no such thing as that because when you think you're faking it, you're actually doing the thing. So,
Hmm.
like, if like, well, I'm gonna put a first ride on this colt, and really, I'm scared to death, but I'm gonna pretend like I'm not. Okay, well, when you're pretending like you're not, well, guess what? You're actually doing the thing. It's not fake to the horse. It's the real thing. It's you right now. But I like to I like to evaluate great horsemen, and controlling emotion is at the top of the list of just not getting upset. I was I told you I spent a lot of time with Martin Black. He's taught me a lot, and he had a lot of influence from Tom Dorrance. He spent a lot of time with Tom Dorrance.
Okay.
Tom Dorrance came out to the ranch there, and he spent quite a bit of time. And you know all about Tom Dorrance, so I asked Martin, so what? Tell me about Tom Dorrance. Like, what was he like? And he said, man, that guy didn't get upset about nothing. He didn't get bothered about anything. One of my favorite things, and I'm going to kind of give you the partial story just to make it quicker, is he said, whenever anybody would say anything bad about someone, like, it's pretty normal in a conversation to come up. People start talking crap about, in their case, it was ranchers and cowboys, so they're talking crap about the neighbor's ranch, whatever,
Hmm.
or about the jigger boss they had to work for that day, whatever, right? And
Hmm.
they'd say, he said, Tom would just subtly change the conversation every time something negative would come up. He would just sneak in there and say, "So, how do you guys like this horse? Didn't that horse operate good today? And um, but he also talks about how well that emotion was, he just didn't get riled up about things. And I feel much more confident now with my mulemanship and horsemanship from that aspect. Now, if
Hmm.
the GPS says recalculating, I'm freaking losing my crap. Okay, you know what I mean?
Well,
Like,
it's because we live in Utah.
yeah, exactly. So, like,
Traffic triples every 3 months.
oh my gosh, yeah, you're not kidding about that. So I'm like, all right, well, if I can just get better in the rest of my life about controlling my emotions, how much better could I be with my horsemanship if I got a grasp on the rest of my life too?
Yeah, that's a big part. How many how many professionals in this industry, Ty, have you known that man, once their personal life starts to flow over into the horsemanship side of things, uh, it goes catastrophic from there.
Yeah.
I've seen some of the very best in the world, guys that I'm like, man, this person's incredible. And there's a couple of phrases that I don't like very much. Um, One being lucky. I think I
Yeah.
is there some things that luck plays a part of? Yes, but I don't like the thing being lucky. Ty Evans is not successful because he's lucky. Ty Evans is successful because he's worked his guts out so that when opportunity arises, he can capitalize. So I don't like a few of those phrases like that. Um, but when that when that flows over into people's lives, they know they lose control of their emotions. And I think for guys like you and mentors like yourself that have really helped me build my program and show me ways of doing things. I look at guys like you, good friend of mine, Corey Cushing's. I've spent some time riding with him. Really similar, man. Check your emotions at the door, and go ride your horses and put your stuff together. There's a guy that's moved up to Idaho and stuff that really similar to like what you're talking about. If customers are around the barn, chatting and they're kind of running people down, man, he's the first one to kind of nip it in the butt, and we don't do that kind of stuff around the barn. But I
Hmm.
think it's those things right there that make it much more consistent for us as horsemen to have that same level emotional playing field all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. I can think of so many instances of the chitter chatter around the barn, and that stuff is poison. But what I tell people, it's not just poison with your human relationships. That energy, that spirit, whatever you want to call it, that feel, that will bleed over into your horsemanship. Like,
A
that,
hundred out of 100 times.
yeah, it's going to carry with you. So if you're just over there, bickering and whatever, and then you go grab your horse, that negative feel just halos around you. And well, I wonder why you can't catch a horse today, you know?
That there's a perfect example right there. That negativity, all of a sudden, that good horse that you've caught 1,000 times, whether it's in a box stall or out in the pasture, you walk out to catch him, man, that bugger's like, I don't want nothing to do with you today. And all of a sudden his head's in the corner. He's not kicking at you or doing nothing nasty, but he just kind of turns away from you. And I've had customers be like, well, Fluffy doesn't usually turn away from me. He's usually there to meet me. And I've told customers this, and in fairness, I've offended quite a few non-pros, and they don't ride with me anymore because I'm not afraid to offend them. Um, but I've told them, it's because you walked in nasty minded.
Hmm.
You walked in with a chip on your shoulder, being nasty minded. The horse don't want to deal with you today, just like I don't want to deal with you today. And yeah, that's a perfect example. All of a sudden, they can't catch a good horse.
So how do you share with your students how to get in that good so let's say they did have they have a bad day or whatever, or they're not getting along with Susie next door, okay, or whatever, right?
Okay.
So what are we doing to get into a good mindset before we go work those horses, before we go grab the halter and get one caught? How can we reset that feel? What do
For
you do?
me, for me, Ty, um, it's a bit of a struggle. If it's one of my older customers that I've had for a while, that I kind of know and understand, um, I've kind of built some things in to my program. I've got some of them that maybe me just standing there talking to them. Maybe I'll leave my horse in the cross ties for a little while, and maybe I'll just spend some time standing there talking to them, and kind of let them vent and blow that stuff out. And I'm third party. I don't care that they're arguing with Susie down the road. It makes no never mind to me, but it lets them get stuff off of their shoulders. And then we can go put together a good training session. Um, I often tell my wife I should have been smart and went to school to be a psychologist, and then I could charge for that kind of stuff rather than being a dumb broke horse trainer. But um,
Yeah.
sometimes I've got one customer in particular that's a very high energy customer. Um, Man, her heart is always in the right place. Um, and she can be a lot. And I sold her a good horse out of my program, um, that is just the most relaxed, happy-go-lucky. He likes to make his owner or whoever's working him that day. And that bugger likes to sell his soul for him. And so sometimes with her, sometimes the best thing for me to do is slow her down a little bit, and I'll say, "Hey, I want you to take a little extra time today. Um, Mojo's looking a little. He's a bright colored paint bugger. he's looking a little green today. Maybe spend a little time shining him up a little bit and stuff. And for her, just putting her hands on her horse and putting a little bit of extra focus into preparing that horse before she gets him saddled and stuff like that. Sometimes that's all she needs. She just needs to get her hands on that horse. And so sometimes, I'll just have her take a little extra time, get his tail shined up, get his mane shined up, and stuff like that. If she's still a little bit wanting to come into the arena, but she's still a little bit overly tight, I might tell her, hey, maybe just let him lunge around you for a minute. Let him burn off some energy. That bugger no sooner needs to burn off energy than fly to the moon. He don't need to lunge. You can get on him 365 days a year and he is going to be the same horse every single time. But what it does do is it puts her at the end of the line with her horse and lets that circular motion just kind of ground her back to being in the moment. And then we can go have a good training session.
I think being present, that's a key. That's a key to that, because when somebody gets hung up on the bad day at work or the person they don't get along with or whatever, all that stuff is past. That's all past.
Mm-hmm.
None of that stuff is happening right now at the barn today. This moment, you're with your horse. So, talking again about, when I'm always watching these great horsemen like yourself. What are they good at? What makes them great? Being present, that's at the top of the list too. Being right here, right now, living in the moment with that horse. Not thinking too far into the future. I mean, we should be thinking a couple of steps ahead, like making a
Mm-hmm.
plan. And, I like to visualize. I'm big on visualizing. Think about what you want. But that's only so far forward. I'm not thinking about tomorrow. I'm not thinking about next year. I'm just
Yeah.
thinking, well, how about the next move? And we're going to complete this, and then I'm going to let them soak a little bit, let them relax. That's the forward thinking I'm talking about. But being
Mm-hmm.
present, I think that's a huge, huge piece that it's actually really hard though, don't you think, to be present?
100%. And I would make a little bit of an argument with you, Ty, and I would say if you're not thinking forward, you're not actually being present. If you're
Oh,
not
that's interesting.
thinking about what you want to get out of that ride today or what you want, I ride so much off of feeling that horse. I might go into the arena and on my board every single day, I have um, not just the horses that I have to work, but I break it down and I try and work everything in three. So for 3 days in a row, I might work on turnarounds. For then the next 3 days, I might work on lead changes. And I try to work everything in threes. I might walk into that arena thinking I'm working on turnarounds today. And whatever horse I'm on might tell me that no, you're going to work on lead departures today because my body's just not right to even be able to lope off correctly. And I would make a little bit of an argument that truly being present is being able to make that quick adjustment and see forward into how do we get there to work on this today. I think uh, being in the moment, I see people almost get Jesus take the wheel mentality.
Yeah. Yeah.
They
Yeah.
get on and just kind of pitch the bridle reins to Fluffy and Jesus take the wheel. Well, that's not effective either,
Mhm.
and stuff. So I very much agree. The great horsemen that I follow, very much 100% present with a game plan. Present
Oh,
with a game plan.
yeah, I like that. Present with a game plan. So, hey, you mentioned something that's fascinating to me, because this is something that I figured out just my own mad scientist experiments. Okay, is in threes. There is some magic in threes. So I try to get my students, and same deal as you with your customers. Um, my students, your customers, these people all work for a living. They're busy. They got
Mhm.
families. They got kids. They got ranches, farms, dogs. They're busy. So the reality of most of my students being able to ride every day is not it's not a thing. So
Sure.
but what I have found is is threes. I say, hey, you know what? If you can do 3 days in a row, I don't care what 3 days. It could be Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or some mix of all of it, whatever. But give me 3 days in a row, and I promise you, on that day three, you're gonna see some changes in the mule and the horse and in yourself. You're gonna see a
Hmm.
difference, and in the self is the really fascinating thing to me, and that's what I found for me too is I need that third day, that third session, things come together, and it's building that feel you're talking about. But talk about your threes there because that's something that's really interesting to me, man.
Um, threes were a thing that I think I kind of did just with my background. I was fortunate enough to come from uh, two very good horsemen, my mom and my dad. And man, I as long as I can remember back, um, when we were working buggy teams, when we were building up to get ready to go show, if they went on the hot walker, um, they did a minimum workout program for 3 days in a row, and then Dad would see if he bumped them up, what did their wind look like, what did their muscle fatigue look like, what was their hydration levels and stuff like that. And so I think without knowing, I was kind of brought up around that threes program. My mom kind of taught it to me without really saying in threes. um she'd always, here's your day to kind of introduce it to the horse. Here's your day where the introduction starts to become an understanding, and on that third day becomes the understanding, um from the horse's perspective. And then, we are fortunate enough, I think, to get around the right horseman at the right time in our career. And I'll never forget the first year I was lucky enough to go spend some time with Corey Cushings, who has been a phenomenal mentor of mine. A lot of times, just geographically, he's been a mentor from a distance. Unless, we get to the horse show and I get to spend some time riding around him. I don't always get to go down and ride with him like I'd like to, but um, we were sitting in the arena one day and I said, man, Corey, I'm really struggling with this. And he says, well, you're here for a week. He says, just work it in days of three. It'll be fine. And I stopped and I was like, it was that perfect time in my career where I think maybe my ears were open to listen.
Yeah,
And I said, what do you mean by threes? And he says, your first day's to teach, your second day's to teach and they understand. And by the third day, that horse is starting to understand, and it's time to go start on something else so that you don't overcook that. And I think for me, it was just being around it said the right way at the right time.
yeah.
And I've really tried to, stay with that threes program in my program.
Yeah, that's smart. I like it. That's just, nobody ever told me that. That would have been great to know a long
Yeah.
time ago. I kind of just figured it, I just kind of stumbled onto it, like you. And this is another thing I've observed in all pretty much every great horseman I've ever been around is being very observant. We're just naturally observant. You just pay attention to things. And so I just noticed like, okay, well, it sure seems like things come together on day three a lot better than they did on 2 days or like you're talking about overcooking. If I hammered
Hmm.
it out 4 and 5 days, well, I might have actually backtracked a little bit. And you're like,
I created a monster, I feel
yeah,
like.
I'm putting in more time and things are getting worse. Oh, I mean, I need to pay attention here. So that stuff is really cool to me. I like that.
I think for me, every time I would break the three rule, um, I'd overcook it. I'd let's say I was working on a haunches in, haunches out, lead departure for my lead change type stuff. Um, man, by about day 6 or 7, that sucker was riding down through the arena like a snake. I couldn't keep him straight. and
Yeah.
man, what am I doing? And in fact, if I remember right, that was something of the problem that I was having that particular day that I was riding with Corey. And he says, man, just break it down in threes. Just do it in threes. Just do it in threes. And on the long drive home at that time, Corey was living in Scottsdale. And on that long drive home from Scottsdale to Utah, I had time to reflect on a lot of the things that we had spent doing. And that was kind of the time that I made that tie-in of, man, that's exactly what mom's taught me. It's exactly what dad's done. It's exactly what the great horsemen in my life have
Yeah.
done, because I'm I'm so competitive in nature that I'll overcook things if I don't make myself leave it alone and start on another maneuver for that horse, or something like that. I'm too dang competitive sometimes, and I really have to make myself be like, nope, that was day 3. Leave it alone. I know it feels really cool, or I know I want to come back and revisit it, but we can do it 3 days from now. We don't need to overcook this project.
Yeah. Yeah. I was just thinking how funny it is, your parents, they raised you, they taught you these things, and it's just like all the rest of us. We got to learn. We come back with somebody else's great idea, and they're like, "I've been telling you this."
The older I
It's
get,
typical.
the older I get, man, the smarter my parents get for sure.
That's great, man.
And they're not saying anything new, they're saying the same stuff they tried to raise me with. I was just too
Yeah.
hard-headed, which
Yeah.
is kind of funny because I always find that seems to be a common trait in us horsemen.
Hmm.
Uh, we all seem to be pretty hard-headed, but never, not the great ones, never hard-headed with a horse, but just in life in general, like we seem to be very competitive and very hard-headed towards a lot of things.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with that. I agree with that. And it's just trying to learn how to manage that, because I think being competitive is a good thing. I like that. I like that, and I'm not necessarily advocating being competitive against somebody else all the time, but even with ourselves, I think it's good to push yourself. I think that's why we're here. I don't think we came to this earth just to stay the same and leave the same. We came here to grow and to be better and to improve, and that there needs to be a competitive nature. And you and I, both of us growing up in Utah, I mean, this is a competitive state,
Hmm.
from all different aspects, industry. I mean, that's we're the beehive state, right? I mean, if there's a place to start a business, it's Utah.
Hmm.
And it's a very competitive business market. And it's the same thing in horsemanship, and ranching. I mean, all these things that I think that level of competitiveness is good. We can kind of get on the negative side of it too. Sometimes people can get too competitive with their animals, even, to where they think they got to win everything all the time, or well, for me and my mules, me and my horses, we're on the same team, and
Hmm.
we're going to win together. There's a saying that I tell my students, Bryan, in my clinics. I say, if my mule's a winner, I'm a winner. If my mule's a loser, well, it takes one to know one.
I like that, Ty.
So, anyways,
I really like that because you know it's so true. I try and teach my customers. Once I have a horse taught all the maneuvers, all the tools that he needs to go into this, it's time to teach them how to be a teammate. And with that, with requiring my horse to be a teammate, I also have to learn to be a teammate.
oh
And
yeah,
that takes as much dedication, I think, if not more, than teaching our horse to be a teammate.
no kidding, man. You've shared some awesome things this morning. I appreciate you getting up bright and early to do this for me. Um, One more thing. So at the end of all my guest episodes, Bryan, I ask my guests to leave a word of advice. Now, you've already given a whole bunch of great advice here, but if you had one last thing that you'd like to tell people, and it can be lifemanship, it can be horsemanship, it can be anything. What's a last piece of advice you'd like to share?
I guess in our industry, it kind of almost becomes a cliche of sorts. But it's 100% true. I've never known it to be a bad thing. Um, there's no bad day spent on a horse,
Yeah.
and for me, as hard as running the business side of life can be, um, my center and my grounding is always back on my horse, and so for me, that's a lot of it, is just getting on my horse and spending some time one on one, and so I've really become a believer that there is no bad day spent on a horse, even if it's not a good day, even if it's, man, this sunbuck just is not getting it today. You know what? For me, it's dang sure better than if I was sitting in a cubicle typing on a computer,
Hmm.
and so I think that get out, go ride, spend some time, put your hands on your horse, on your mule. You may only have 20 minutes. You may not even be able to saddle up and go for a ride, but get your hands on that animal. Spend a little bit of time with it. I think it makes a huge difference.
Yeah. I think the world would be a better place, Brian, if everybody could do that every day, huh?
Oh man.
It's grounding. It gets us to, gets us back to whatever you want to call it, back to nature, just back to just life, just living, and it's so cool to be around an animal that is, they're just in the moment, they're right there,
Yep.
they're just right here right now, and I think that's good for us. So I appreciate that advice, my friend. Appreciate you coming on.
I greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, I could sit here and talk to you all day, but I know you gotta get to training and I gotta get to doing my things here, and
Yeah,
so
we need to get quit spending so much time doing what we're doing and actually saddle up and go spend some time doing it together.
that's right. Yeah, that'd be good. Let's do it, man. Hey
So
guys, so appreciate you coming on, Brian, and I appreciate you guys listening today, all of our listeners out there. Brian, how can our listeners find you? Tell them about your Facebook page that your wife's going to get going.
so she's got it up and running now. It's just Hooley Performance Horse Training. And she'll be, updating everything, not just with training type stuff, but she's also going to start putting together our 2025 season, and where we're going to be showing probably which horses and parts of the team are going and stuff like that. So be looking for that if people are interested and stuff like that. You can always reach out to us on there. If you have any questions, anything like that. It's the same thing with Instagram, same handle, just Hooley Performance Horse Training. Those are my two social medias and stuff. So that's where you can find us.
Cool. Yeah, you guys, if you're interested in that ranch horse versatility, Brian is your man. Come talk to him. He's got a lot of knowledge, so check him out. And to everybody out there, thanks for listening. If you guys would be kind enough to leave us a review, I think Brian deserves 5 stars at least.
I don't
So,
know about that, but
so leave us a 5 star review. Tell us what you think of the podcast. You can always email me, ty@tsmules.com. Go to my website. There's a contact form on there as well, tsmules.com. And we'd love to hear from you guys. So thanks for listening today. God bless you. And we'll see you down the road.